We would like to introduce Mr. Joakim Reiter, Deputy Secretary General of the UNCTAD. Joakim Reiter is a Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Immediately prior to joining UNCTAD in April 2015, Mr. Reiter served as a Deputy Director General with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sweden. From 2011 to 2014, Mr. Reiter held the position of Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Sweden to the WTO in Switzerland. From 2008 to 2011, he served as Minister Consular and Head of the Trade Section at the representation of Sweden to the European Union and Belgium. Prior to his role at the European Union Directorate General for Trade in the European Commission from 2004 to 2008, he also held positions with the Swedish National Board of Trade, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Industry. He is a graduate of Lund University and the London School of Economics. Mr. Reiter. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Everyone can hear me? Yes? Good. All right, thank you very much, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As the Chairman mentioned, I'm Swedish, which means I come from a country that has built much of its wealth on mining. It also means that and I spent last night reviewing Swedish history in mining, which is a rather interesting and depressing reading. The Swedish copper mine in Falun, which relied heavily on German engineers, by the way, underlining the importance of migration as a means of spurring productivity in the mining sector. But this mine, when it was most active, was described by the general public in Sweden, including by Carl von Linné, one of the big botanists on Earth, as the hell on earth. It was key to Swedish prosperity. It was part of the military industrial complex that Sweden built up, part of its waging wars all across Europe. But to give you some sense of the type of challenges that Sweden faced in the mining business, it involved a massive human sacrifice. More than half of the laborers in the Falu copper mine were slave laborers, so prison laborers. Half of all adults involved in the mining business died prematurely because of lung diseases. It was an absolute environmental disaster. Actually, the mine was so polluted that nothing grew within 3-4 kilometers from the mining site. The closest lake to the mine took almost 200 years before marine life returned to it. So it was 200 years of a dead lake in the middle of a city, which is Falun, where now accidentally a good friend of mine goes, and we always go and look at the museum there for the mine. But it's a disastrous history of Sweden. On the one hand, on the good side for building the prosperity, on the other hand, exactly what we're supposed to discuss today, the sustainability chapter, both with respect to human dignity and the lack of dignity provided, and with respect to the environmental disasters that it created for the local community in particular. And as we all know, unfortunately, mining is still not a sector today that people usually associate with sustainable development. I think we all know why this is the case. The type of examples that I described in Falun is perhaps not prevalent in most mines, but certainly there is a number of incidences of poor working conditions, even allegations of human rights abuses. We have numerous cases of environmental degradation and even occasionally environmental disasters, and that's in both rich and poor countries, in both heavily regulated and largely unregulated countries. And this makes, of course, mining an unlikely partner in the general rhetoric of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is something that we have to change, and it's something that we actually can change. And this is why this topic of this edition of the Intergovernmental Forum on Mining, Metals, Minerals, and Sustainable Development is so important in my view. We need to make sure that mining sector delivers on the Sustainable Development Goals in the economic, social, and environmental fronts, not in one, but all three simultaneously. If managed and properly regulated wisely, the sector can be an engine for sustainable development, as we've seen in a number of fronts. And this meeting is a good place to start this discussion. To underline why the mining sector is so important, although that should be common knowledge in the economy of many countries, and particularly developing countries, let me share some figures with you. In many low and middle income countries, mining comprises of 60 to 90% of total FDI. Of course, a huge engine for building productive capacity and raising prosperity. It accounts for around 30 to 60% of total exports, and therefore key to maintain the macroeconomic stability and avoiding a current account deficit that can bring instability to the general economic environment of a country. It accounts for around 20% of government revenues, therefore implying that it is also critical as a resource of funding for the type of public goods that the government should provide to its citizens, be it in education, health, and like. And it also accounts as much as 10% of national income. So given its economic importance, we are obliged to do everything in our power to harness the mining sector to the 2030 agenda. However, the achievement of the SDGs is a difficult task in the current global environment with low commodity prices. I'm sorry for that. The sector suffers one of its worst years in 2015, and for the year 2016, mineral and metal prices are projected to decline 11%, following the 21% drop in 2015. This is bad news, but as I said in the commodity forum at our ministerial, never missed the opportunity of a good crisis. Today I will share with you 3 messages on how this sector can contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. And I consciously will not mention environment, since I know people on the panel are better placed to raise this specific aspect with you. First, I want to talk about jobs and proper jobs. Jobs are actually the most important determinant of living standards around the world. And job earnings are the most important driver of poverty reduction. Job creation fosters social cohesion. And this is why SDG 8 and its targets have set job creation as an important development priority. Achieving this goal will require the creation of millions of stable, decent, wage-paying jobs. The manufacturing sector is expected to create most of these jobs, but we have to explore all avenues of job creation in different sectors of the economy, and the mining sector can and has to make a fair contribution to this objective. The mining sector, of course, can create direct, indirect, and induced jobs. A number of studies suggest that the sector generates little direct employment, particularly after mining begin operations, but the number of indirect and induced jobs created in the sector can be significant. For example, a study on Peru's Yacocha mine, and I apologize for that pronunciation, finds that between 2005 and 2006, the mine generated over 10,000 direct jobs and additional 90,000 indirect and induced jobs. The new jobs represented 0.4% of Peru's total formal employment, almost 19% of formal employment in the mining sector, and 13% of formal employment in the Cajamarca region. In Zambia in 2014, the 4 major mining companies generated 147,700 direct, indirect, and induced job opportunities. And in this country, mining-related employment accounts for 16% of all employment. So given such a potential, what can policymakers do to create jobs in the mining sector to achieve the SDGs? And I believe there are 3 broad categories of policies we must explore. The first category includes prudent macroeconomic policies. Fiscal, monetary, and exchange rate policies help maintaining macroeconomic stability, promote steady economic growth, and attract foreign and direct and domestic investment, all of which are necessary conditions for job creation. Let me add on the fiscal side the importance of transparency of the revenues coming from mining, including the transparency around the type of mining contracts that is signed so that local accountability is ensured. Second, our policies aim to stimulate broad-based economic development and help economic gains in the mining sector trickle down to local businesses and communities. Not to treat the mine as a satellite, but constantly seeking how to spur local businesses and communities through the mining activities. And third, beyond the mining sectoral policies, we should include policies to foster diversification and structural transformation. Without diversification and structural transformation, mineral-rich developing countries will achieve neither sustainable development nor job creation. Next, I would like to mention the mining and development linkages. Many mineral-rich developing countries export their resources with little or no value addition to them. As a result, the overall participation of these economies in global value chains or even regional value chains is low, and their share of total value added is small. And as we all know, value added is basically a very key component of that is paying salaries to local communities. So even when a developing country succeeds in entering global value chains, many activities remain low value added, and not all of that value is retained in the domestic economy. Therefore, we need to strengthen development linkages, and that is crucial to allow these countries to better take advantage of the opportunities and diffuse the proper benefits of resource rents to the wider economy, develop all stages of production, and help local communities achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Currently, many mineral-rich developing economies have limited development linkages established from the mining sector to the rest of the economy. And here we have to also go beyond the linkages in terms of manufacturing, look at the critically important role played by services as the linkages to improve productivity and improve value addition in developing countries. Third, I would like to briefly touch upon the gender challenges and opportunities in the mining sector. Unfortunately, as we know all too well, the mining sector does not always contribute to reducing income and gender inequalities, and here I'm expressing myself very diplomatically. The disparity in opportunities for men and women and youth in the mining sector rather appears to be growing. The career opportunities in the sector and the associated earning potential are more available to men, while women and their families are vulnerable to the risks created by such a sector. Women entrepreneurs face obstacles in the mining sector itself, which are often the result of negative perceptions, attitudes, and discrimination related to gender stereotypes. Women also face more tangible obstacles in buying land, opening bank accounts, or obtaining loans. All of these obstacles together have one result: fewer women in the mining sector, and therefore fewer women having the opportunity of capturing the value addition prospects of the mining sector. Let me give you one example. In Zambia again, 40% of women are engaged in entrepreneurial activities, yet only 1% of approximately 763 large-scale mining licenses are held by women. So we have to discuss and be serious about how we can make sure that the mining sector becomes an engine of proper inclusion that we expect it to deliver. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that these upcoming deliberations will provide new ideas and innovations on improved ways of managing your mining sectors to advance the attainment of the SDGs. I must say I read with great interest the preparatory note for this, including the mapping of the relevance of various SDGs and their targets to the mining sector. And it's a very, very good starting point. And I sincerely hope that your deliberations will be successful. Thank you very much.